Sarah Morgan stared at the pile of boxes stacked against her apartment wall. 3 weeks after moving in, she still hadn't found the energy to unpack them all. The small two-bedroom apartment in Portland wasn't much, but it was hers, the first place she'd rented since the divorce. At 34, starting over wasn't how she'd imagined her life would go. She wrapped her hands around a mug of lukewarm coffee and sighed. The morning light filtered through cheap blinds, casting striped shadows across the worn carpet. From down the hall came the sound of cartoons. Her 7-year-old daughter Emma was already awake. "Mom, can we have pancakes?" Emma appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair tangled from sleep. Sarah forced a smile. "Not today, honey. We've got cereal, though." The truth was, she'd been stretching every dollar since Mark had lost his job and stopped paying child support 3 months ago. The legal secretary position she'd found paid just enough to cover rent and utilities, with barely anything left over. Emma's face fell, but she nodded, used to hearing "not today" lately. Sarah felt the familiar stab of guilt. She'd promised Emma that the move would be an adventure, but so far it had been nothing but stress and tight budgets. As Sarah poured cereal for Emma, her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Jen. "Don't forget dinner tonight. 6 p.m., the kids miss their cousin." She'd completely forgotten about the family dinner. Seeing everyone, their stable marriages, their mortgage-backed homes, their family vacations, just highlighted everything she'd lost. But Emma needed family, and Sarah couldn't let her own discomfort get in the way of that. At work, Sarah kept her head down, processing paperwork with mechanical precision. Her boss, Mr. Harrington, barely acknowledged her existence beyond assigning new tasks. The other secretaries chatted about weekend plans and shared lunch breaks, but Sarah kept to herself. It was easier than answering questions about her past. That afternoon, as she was filing documents, Mr. Harrington stopped by her desk. "Sarah, we need someone to take notes at the partners' meeting tomorrow evening. Johnson is out sick." "Tomorrow evening?" Sarah's stomach clenched. "I'm sorry, I can't. I have my daughter and no sitter. This is important." His expression made it clear this wasn't a request. "Figure something out." As he walked away, Sarah fought back tears. She couldn't afford a babysitter, and asking Jen again would just add to the growing list of favors she owed her sister. The truth was, she was drowning. In debt, in responsibility, in loneliness, and nobody seemed to notice. That evening at Jen's house, Sarah pushed food around her plate while her brother-in-law Tom talked about their upcoming anniversary trip. Emma played happily with her cousins in the living room, temporarily freed from the weight of their new reality. "You're awfully quiet," Jen said, passing Sarah a glass of wine. "Everything okay with the new job?" "It's fine," Sarah answered automatically. "Just tired." Jen gave her a look that said she wasn't fooled. "The kids can have a sleepover this weekend if you need a break." "Actually," Sarah hesitated, "I need a favor for tomorrow night." "Work thing." "No problem." Jen squeezed her arm. "That's what family's for." Later, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed in their apartment, her daughter asked, "Mom, when are we going to be happy again?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. "We are happy, sweetie. We have each other, don't we?" Emma nodded, but her eyes held a wisdom no 7-year-old should possess. "But you're sad all the time." Sarah smoothed Emma's hair back from her forehead. "I'm just tired, that's all. Things will get better." The words felt hollow even as she spoke them. That night, Sarah sat alone on her still-boxed couch and let the tears come. She'd built her entire life around Mark and their marriage. Now, she hardly recognized herself, this fragile, fearful woman who couldn't even promise her daughter pancakes. Somewhere along the way, she'd become a shadow of the person she used to be. As she wiped her eyes, Sarah spotted Emma's drawing on the refrigerator, a stick-figure family of just the two of them, standing beneath a rainbow. Despite everything, Emma still believed in better days ahead. Maybe it was time Sarah started believing too. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of resolve she hadn't felt in months. She dug through a box labeled Sarah's Stuff until she found an old journal. On the first blank page, she wrote, "Things I used to love before I forgot who I was." The list was short at first, reading mysteries, Saturday morning hikes, photography, but it was a start. Before leaving for work, she stuck the list on the refrigerator next to Emma's drawing. Small steps, but in the right direction. At the partners' meeting that evening, Sarah took detailed notes while the senior attorneys discussed an upcoming class action case. One of them, a woman named Diana Reed, asked questions that cut through the legal jargon, focusing on the people affected by the corporate negligence they were fighting against. "We need to remember these aren't just case numbers," Diana said. "These are families whose lives have been upended." Sarah found herself nodding, then quickly looked down when Diana caught her eye. For the first time since starting the job, Sarah felt a flicker of interest in the actual work they did. After the meeting, as Sarah gathered her notes, Diana approached her. "You're new here, right? Sarah, isn't it?" "Yes, about a month now," Sarah replied, surprised to be noticed. "Good notes," Diana said, glancing at Sarah's careful handwriting. "You caught details even I missed." She paused. "We have a research position opening up in my department. More money, more regular hours. You should apply." Before Sarah could respond, Diana was called away by another partner. Sarah stood there, the conversation replaying in her mind. More money, regular hours. And someone had actually seen her, not just as a divorced single mom struggling to get by, but as a person with skills and potential. That night, after picking up Emma from Jen's, Sarah added one more item to her list on the refrigerator: being seen. The photography exhibit was housed in a renovated warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Sarah felt nervous as she waited outside, checking her reflection in a window. She'd spent more time than usual getting ready, trading her usual jeans for a simple dress she hadn't worn since before the divorce. When Diana arrived, Sarah's nervousness faded into genuine pleasure. There was something so steady about Diana's presence, like standing on solid ground after months of shifting sand. "You look nice," Diana said as they walked in together. "So do you," Sarah replied, noting Diana's casual blazer over a t-shirt and dark jeans. "I haven't been to an art exhibit in years." "The photographer documents families living in food deserts across America," Diana explained. "I thought it might interest you, given the cases we've been working on." The photographs were powerful, stark black and white images of parents stretching meager resources, children playing in neighborhoods without grocery stores, elderly people walking miles for fresh produce. Sarah found herself moved by the dignity captured in each frame. "These remind me of my hometown," she said quietly. After the mill closed, the whole economy collapsed. The grocery store shut down a year later. Diana nodded. "My firm is trying to take on more cases addressing food justice. It's connected to everything else we do: environmental law, healthcare, housing." They lingered over each photograph, their conversation shifting between the exhibit, work, and more personal topics. Sarah found herself sharing things she rarely talked about: her abandoned dreams of becoming a writer, her complicated relationship with her mother, her fears about raising Emma alone. Diana listened without judgment, offering her own stories in return: her struggles as a woman in a male-dominated field, her decision to prioritize career over traditional family life, her close relationship with her sister's children. After the exhibit, they walked to a nearby cafe, their conversation continuing over coffee and shared dessert. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so comfortable with someone, so seen and understood. "Can I ask you something personal?" Diana said as they lingered over the last of their coffee. Sarah nodded, curious. "Are you open to dating again? After your divorce, I mean." The question hung between them. Sarah's heart quickened. "I haven't really thought about it," she said, though that wasn't entirely true. "My focus has been on getting stable for Emma." Diana nodded. "I understand that. But," Sarah continued, gathering her courage, "I've enjoyed spending time with you. More than I expected to." A smile spread across Diana's face. "I've enjoyed it too. Very much." The moment was interrupted by Sarah's phone buzzing. She glanced down and froze at the text message from her ex-husband. "Got a job offer in Seattle. Need to talk about custody arrangements." "Everything okay?" Diana asked, noticing her expression. "It's Mark," Sarah said, her voice tight. "He's moving to Seattle. He wants to talk about Emma." Diana's hand covered hers briefly. "Do you need to go?" Sarah shook her head. "Not right now. He can wait." She put the phone away, determined not to let Mark ruin this day. But the message had unsettled her. As they walked back to their cars, Sarah grew quieter, her mind racing with implications. If Mark moved, what would happen with Emma's visits? Would they need to go back to court? How would Emma handle having her father so far away? At her car, Diana turned to face her. "I had a wonderful time today." "Me too," Sarah said, trying to push away thoughts of Mark. Diana studied her face. But something shifted. Your ex's message. Sarah sighed. I'm sorry. It's just complicated. Life usually is, Diana said gently. Listen, I like you, Sarah. I think that's pretty clear. But I understand you have a lot going on, and Emma has to be your priority. She is, Sarah agreed. But that doesn't mean there's no room for anything else. Diana smiled. Good to know. She hesitated, then leaned forward and kissed Sarah's cheek. Call me when you've sorted things out with your ex. No pressure, no rush. That night, Sarah called Mark, her stomach tight with anxiety. The conversation went about as well as she expected. It's a great opportunity, Mark insisted. I can't pass it up. I understand that, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice level. But what about Emma? You'd be 1,000 miles away. We can work something out. Maybe longer visits during summer and holidays. And what about the rest of the year? She needs her father more than just a few weeks at a time. Mark was silent for a moment. Look, Sarah, I know this isn't ideal, but my girlfriend's already lined up a job there too. We're making plans. The mention of his girlfriend, the woman he'd cheated with, still stung, even after all this time. So Emma should just adapt to your new life? What about what she needs? What she needs is for both her parents to be happy, Mark countered. I'm miserable here since the divorce. No job prospects, no future. Sarah bit back a retort about whose fault the divorce was. When are you planning to move? End of next month. I wanted to give you time to adjust to the idea. After hanging up, Sarah sat on her bed, anger and worry competing for dominance. She thought about calling Jen, but hesitated. Her sister, though supportive, had made it clear she thought Sarah should move on from the anger toward Mark. Instead, she found herself texting Diana. Any chance you're still up? The response came quickly. I am. Everything okay? Sarah hesitated, then called. Diana answered on the first ring. He's definitely moving, Sarah said without preamble. Next month. I'm sorry, Diana said. That's tough. The thing is, Sarah continued, part of me is still so angry at him. For the affair, for the divorce, for all of it. And now he's disrupting our lives again. Your anger is valid, Diana said. He broke your trust in a fundamental way. The validation loosened something in Sarah's chest. Everyone else acts like I should be over it by now. Healing doesn't follow a timetable, Diana replied. Especially when you're still dealing with the consequences every day. They talked for over an hour, Diana mostly listening as Sarah worked through her complicated feelings about Mark, their marriage, and the uncertain future. When Sarah finally grew quiet, Diana spoke. Can I offer a perspective? Of course. It sounds like you've been carrying the weight of making everything okay for Emma since the divorce. Making sure she feels secure, maintaining some kind of relationship with her father, protecting her from your own pain. That's a lot for one person to handle. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Someone has to. Yes, Diana agreed. But maybe not alone. Have you thought about talking to Emma directly about this? Not the adult details, but the basic situation? She's young, but she's smart. Kids often understand more than we give them credit for. I'm afraid of upsetting her, Sarah admitted. She might already be upset and just not showing it, Diana suggested gently. The uncertainty could be worse than knowing the truth. The next day, Sarah took Emma for ice cream and explained, as simply as she could, that her dad was moving to Seattle for a new job. Will I still see him? Emma asked, surprisingly calm. Of course, Sarah assured her. It might be different than before, longer visits, but less often. We're still figuring it out. Emma nodded, considering. Is he moving because of me? The question broke Sarah's heart. No, sweetie. Absolutely not. Your dad loves you very much. This is about his job, not about you. Are you sad about it? Sarah considered her answer carefully. I'm sad that you won't get to see him as often. But I want you to know that no matter what, you have me. Always. And we have Aunt Jen and Uncle Tom and your cousins. You are so loved, Emma. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied. And Diana too, right? She's our friend now. Sarah smiled. Yes, Diana too. That evening, Sarah called Diana again. You were right, she said. Emma handled it better than I expected. She had questions, but mostly she just wanted reassurance. Kids are amazing that way, Diana said. How are you doing with it all? Sarah considered the question. Still processing. But talking about it helped, with you and with Emma. I've spent so long trying to keep everything together on my own that I forget it's okay to lean on other people sometimes. Well, I'm here whenever you need to lean, Diana said softly. The words filled Sarah with warmth. I was thinking, she said, gathering her courage. Maybe you'd like to come over for dinner this weekend? Nothing fancy, just me and Emma. She's been asking when she'll see you again. I'd love that, Diana replied, and Sarah could hear the smile in her voice. As she hung up, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. A sense of possibility, of doors opening rather than closing. Mark's move would create challenges, but for the first time, she didn't feel like she was facing them alone. The weight of truth about her marriage, her anger, her fears, was still there, but somehow it seemed lighter, shared between trusted hands. The first dinner with Diana at their apartment was nothing like Sarah had imagined. She'd spend hours cleaning, cooking, and worrying about whether her modest home would measure up. But the moment Diana arrived with a small potted plant for Emma to start your own home garden and a bottle of wine for Sarah, the awkwardness melted away. Emma immediately pulled Diana to her room to show off her space-themed decorations and growing collection of rocks that she insisted were potential meteorites. Sarah listened to their conversation from the kitchen, Diana's genuine interest evident in her questions about each prized stone. "Your daughter is incredible," Diana said later as they cleaned up after dinner, Emma engrossed in a book on the couch. "So curious about everything." "She gets that from her dad," Sarah admitted, surprising herself with the lack of bitterness in her voice. Mark was always the one with 1,000 questions about how things worked. Diana handed her a plate to dry. "And what did she get from you?" Sarah considered this. Stubbornness, probably. And maybe her sense of justice. "She always stands up for the underdogs at school." "That definitely sounds like you," Diana said with a smile. "The way you fight for our clients, even when the odds seem impossible." As the evening wound down, Emma fell asleep on the couch. Sarah carried her to bed, tucking her in and kissing her forehead before returning to Diana, who was looking at the family photos on the bookshelf. "That's Emma when she was 3, Sarah said, pointing to a beach picture. "Her first time seeing the ocean." Diana nodded. "She has your smile." She paused, turning towards Sarah. "Thank you for inviting me tonight. It means a lot, being included in your life like this." "It's nice having you here," Sarah said softly. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Diana stepped closer, her eyes asking a question. Sarah answered by closing the distance between them, their lips meeting in a gentle kiss. It was brief but electric, leaving Sarah slightly breathless when they pulled apart. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," Diana admitted. Sarah smiled. "Me too." The weeks that followed brought a gentle shift in their relationship. Diana became a regular presence in their lives. Friday night movies with Emma, weekend hikes, quiet dinners after Emma was in bed. Sarah found herself opening up about parts of herself she'd kept hidden for years, and Diana responded with her own vulnerabilities. When Mark finally moved to Seattle, the reality hit harder than Sarah had anticipated. Emma was quiet the night after they dropped him off at the airport, picking at her dinner and going to bed early. "She'll be okay," Diana reassured Sarah as they sat on the couch later. "This is a big adjustment." "I know," Sarah sighed. "I just hate seeing her sad." "You can't protect her from every hurt," Diana said gently. "But you can show her how to move through it." The first video call with Mark was awkward, with Emma unusually shy and Mark obviously distracted by unpacked boxes in his new apartment. When they hung up, Emma crawled into Sarah's lap, something she hadn't done in months. "I miss Daddy," she whispered. "I know you do, sweetie. It's okay to be sad about it." "Is he going to forget about me?" Sarah's heart clenched. "No, never. Your dad loves you very much. This move doesn't change that. But what if he makes a new family there? With Melissa?" Emma's voice was small, naming Mark's girlfriend for the first time. Sarah chose her words carefully. "Your dad might build a life with Melissa, but that doesn't replace you. Ever. You're his daughter, and nothing changes that." Emma nodded against her shoulder. "Can Diana come over tomorrow?" She said she'd help me with my science project. The easy way Emma included Diana in her request for comfort surprised Sarah. "I can ask her. I'm sure she'd love to." That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah called Diana and explained what had happened. "Of course I'll come over," Diana said without hesitation. "What time works for you?" "Actually," Sarah began, "I was thinking maybe we could all go to the park first. Emma needs a distraction, and it's supposed to be nice out." "Perfect. I'll bring lunch." The next day, as they spread a blanket under a large oak tree at the park, Sarah watched Emma explain her science project ideas to Diana. The easy rapport between them filled her with a complicated mix of emotions, gratitude, tenderness, and a hint of worry. "You've got that look," Diana said when Emma ran off to the playground. "What look?" "The one where you're overthinking something." Diana took her hand. "Want to share?" Sarah sighed. "I'm just navigating new territory here. Emma's getting attached to you. Is that a problem?" "No," Sarah said quickly. "It's wonderful, actually. But I worry about what happens if things don't work out between us." Diana considered this. "That's a fair concern. I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you I don't take my relationship with Emma lightly. Or with you." "I know that." Sarah squeezed her hand. "I just never expected any of this. A year ago, my life was completely different." "Sometimes the unexpected turns out to be exactly what we need," Diana said. "I certainly wasn't looking for a relationship when I noticed you taking notes in that meeting." Later that week, Sarah received an unexpected call from Mark. His voice sounded strained. "Is everything okay?" "Is it Emma?" she asked immediately. "Emma's fine," he assured her. "But I wanted to talk to you about something. Melissa's pregnant." The news hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Oh, when?" "She's about 3 months along. We just found out." Sarah sat down, processing the information. Emma would have a half-sibling. Mark was creating a new family, just as Emma had feared. "Congratulations," she managed to say. "I'm telling you first because I want to figure out how to tell Emma," Mark continued. "She should hear it from me, but I'm not sure how." Despite her complicated feelings, Sarah appreciated that he'd thought of Emma's needs. "She's worried you're replacing her. That needs to be addressed directly." "I would never," Mark started. "I know that," Sarah interrupted. "But she's 7 and her dad just moved across the country. This is going to be hard for her." They talked for another 20 minutes, mapping out a plan for how Mark would tell Emma during their next video call, with Sarah present for support. It was the most civil conversation they'd had in months. After hanging up, Sarah called Jen, needing her sister's perspective. "How are you feeling about it?" Jen asked after Sarah shared the news. "Honestly, I'm not sure," Sarah admitted. "Part of me is hurt that he's moving on so completely. But that's not fair. I'm moving on too, with Diana." "It's different," Jen pointed out. "He's the one who cheated. And now he's having a baby with the woman he cheated with." "I know. But dwelling on that doesn't help Emma." Sarah sighed. "And it doesn't help me either." "You've changed," Jen said. "In a good way. A year ago, this news would have devastated you." Sarah thought about that after they hung up. She had changed. The pain of Mark's betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined her. She had built something new, a career she cared about, a home for her daughter, and a relationship with Diana that challenged and supported her. When Emma came home from her playdate, Sarah took her for ice cream and listened to her stories about her friend's new puppy. Looking at her daughter's animated face, Sarah felt a surge of protectiveness. The coming conversation about Mark's baby would be difficult, but they would get through it together. That night, she texted Diana, "Dinner tomorrow? I have news to share." Diana's response came quickly, "Your place or mine?" Sarah smiled at the familiar question. "Mine. Emma has a play date after school." "I'll be there," Diana replied, adding a heart emoji that made Sarah's pulse quicken slightly. Sarah set down her phone and looked around the apartment, no longer just a place they were staying, but a home they had created. The moving boxes were long gone, replaced by Emma's artwork, books they both loved, and small touches that reflected their new life. On the refrigerator, Sarah's list had grown longer over the months. Things I love that I'm rediscovering. The latest edition, building bridges instead of walls. The news about Mark's baby affected Emma exactly as Sarah had feared. During the video call, Emma had listened quietly as Mark explained about the baby coming in 6 months, her face a mask of forced politeness. But afterward, she'd retreated to her room, refusing dinner and emerging only after Sarah promised they could call Diana. "Why does he need another kid?" Emma asked later that evening, nestled between Sarah and Diana on the couch. "Aren't I enough?" Diana stroked Emma's hair while Sarah searched for the right words. "It's not about you not being enough," Sarah said carefully. "Having another child doesn't mean your dad loves you any less. It's like," she glanced at Diana for support, "it's like how your mom has enough love for both you and me," Diana suggested gently. "Her caring about me doesn't take anything away from how much she loves you." Emma considered this, frowning. "But you're not a baby. Babies need a lot of attention." "That's true," Sarah acknowledged. "The baby will need a lot of your dad's time." But that doesn't change who you are to him. Will I have to share my room when I visit? Emma's practical question suggested she was beginning to process the reality. I don't know, sweetie. We can ask Dad about that next time you talk. Over the following weeks, Emma cycled through various emotions about the baby news: curiosity, excitement, jealousy, and worry. Sarah did her best to validate each feeling, reminding herself that Emma's reaction was normal and healthy. Meanwhile, Sarah's own life was growing increasingly complex. The case she'd been researching with Diana was moving forward, demanding longer hours at the office. Emma's school activities were ramping up with spring performances and field trips, and her relationship with Diana was deepening in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. "You look exhausted," Diana observed one evening as they worked late at the office, surrounded by case files. Sarah rubbed her eyes. "I am. Emma has a field trip tomorrow that I promised to chaperone, but I also need to finish these depositions by Friday." Diana closed the file in front of her. "Let me help. I can take half the depositions." "You already have your own workload," Sarah protested. "True, but I don't have a 7-year-old and a field trip tomorrow." Diana's smile was gentle. "It's not weakness to accept help, you know." Sarah's instinct was to refuse, to prove she could handle everything on her own. But the truth was, she was drowning in responsibilities. "Okay," she said finally. "Thank you." The next day, watching Emma examine tide pools with her classmates, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She'd spent so long trying to be everything for everyone that she'd forgotten the simple joy of being present in a single moment. When her phone buzzed with a text from Diana, depositions divided and conquered. "How are the tide pools?" Sarah smiled and snapped a picture of Emma holding up a starfish to share. That evening, as Emma described the field trip to Diana over dinner at their apartment, Sarah watched the easy interaction between them. Over the past 6 months, Diana had become a fixture in their lives, not replacing Mark as Emma's parent, but creating her own unique relationship with both of them. "Can Diana come to my school play next week?" Emma asked as Sarah tucked her in that night. "I want her to see my costume." "If she's not too busy with work," Sarah hedged, though she knew Diana would move mountains to be there. "She'll come," Emma said confidently. "She always does." The simple statement gave Sarah pause. It was true. Diana had become remarkably reliable in their lives, showing up not just for the big moments, but for everyday dinners, homework help, and weekend errands. The realization was both comforting and slightly alarming. They'd created a life together without ever really discussing what that meant long-term. The next morning, Sarah dropped Emma at school and headed to the office earlier than usual, hoping to get ahead of her workload. She was surprised to find Diana already there, coffee in hand. "Morning," Diana said, sliding a second cup toward Sarah. "Made just how you like it." "You're here early," Sarah observed, gratefully accepting the coffee. "Couldn't sleep, thinking about the Henderson case." They worked side by side through the morning, their professional rhythm as comfortable as their personal one. By lunch, they'd made significant progress on their brief. "We make a good team," Diana commented as they grabbed sandwiches from the deli across the street. "We do," Sarah agreed. She hesitated, then added, "Emma asked if you're coming to her school play next week." "Of course," Diana said immediately. "I already put it on my calendar." "Why? Is there a problem?" "No, not a problem." Sarah picked at her sandwich. "It's just, she expects you to be there. For everything." Diana's expression grew serious. "And that bothers you?" "Not bothers, exactly." Sarah struggled to articulate her feelings. "It makes me realize how integrated you've become in our lives." "In a good way," she added quickly, seeing Diana's face fall. "But also in a way we haven't really talked about." "Ah," Diana said, understanding dawning. "You mean we've been playing house without discussing the mortgage?" The metaphor made Sarah smile despite her anxiety. "Something like that." Diana reached across the table and took her hand. "I love Emma. And I love you. I want to be in your lives for the long haul, if that's what you want too." The direct declaration of love, their first, took Sarah's breath away. "I love you too," she said softly. "And I want that. I'm just scared sometimes of depending on someone again." "That makes sense after what you went through with Mark," Diana said. "But I'm not him, Sarah. I don't make promises lightly." Back at the office, they returned to work, but Sarah's mind kept drifting to their conversation. That evening, after Emma was asleep, she called Diana. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," Sarah began. About being in our lives for the long haul. I meant it, Diana said. I know. And I want that too. Sarah took a deep breath. Which is why I think we should talk about moving in together. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Are you sure? That's a big step. I'm sure that I love you and that you make our lives better, Sarah said. The practical details we can figure out. But I'm ready to stop being afraid of building something permanent. They agreed to discuss it more over the weekend, when they could talk face-to-face without Emma overhearing. But the seed had been planted, and Sarah found herself imagining what their combined lives might look like. Diana's books mixed with hers on the shelves, a bigger place with room for Emma to grow, shared meals and quiet evenings, and the steady certainty of partnership. The school play the following week was a triumph of elementary school theater. Emma, dressed as a very sparkly Mars, delivered her 3 lines perfectly and beamed when she spotted both Sarah and Diana in the audience. Afterward, as they waited to collect Emma from backstage, Mark called. "How did it go?" he asked, his voice tinny through the phone. "She was perfect," Sarah said, surprised but pleased that he'd remembered. "I took a video. I'll send it to you." "Thanks," Mark said. "I wish I could have been there." The sincerity in his voice caught Sarah off guard. "She missed you," she admitted. But she was excited that Diana came. There was a pause. "Diana? Is that your friend from work?" Sarah glanced at Diana, who was chatting with another parent nearby. "She's my partner," Sarah corrected gently. Another pause. "I see," Mark said finally. "Emma mentions her a lot during our calls. She seems to like her." "She does," Sarah confirmed, bracing for a negative reaction. But Mark surprised her. "That's good. Emma needs people who care about her." He hesitated, then added, "I'm glad you found someone, Sarah." "Really?" The sincerity in his voice brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she managed. "That means a lot." After they hung up, Diana returned to Sarah's side. "Everything okay?" Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. "Just an unexpectedly civil conversation with Mark. He asked about Emma's performance." Diana squeezed her hand. "Progress." Emma burst out of the backstage door then, still in her Mars costume, and ran straight into both of their arms for a group hug. "Did you see me? I didn't forget any lines. And I did the orbit motion just like we practiced." "You were amazing," Diana assured her. "The best planet in the solar system," Sarah added. As they walked to the car, Emma between them holding both their hands, Sarah felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was her family now, different from what she'd imagined years ago, but no less real or valuable. The path hadn't been easy, and there would be more challenges ahead, but she was no longer facing them alone. That weekend, as promised, Sarah and Diana discussed the logistics of moving in together. They decided to wait until the end of the school year, giving Emma time to adjust to the idea and themselves time to find the right place, something with enough space for all of them, including Diana's cat Justice. "We should talk to Emma first," Sarah said. "Make sure she's comfortable with the idea." Diana nodded. "Absolutely. This affects her life as much as ours." The conversation with Emma turned out to be less complicated than Sarah had feared. "So Diana would live with us all the time?" Emma asked, processing the information. "Like, every day?" "That's right," Sarah confirmed. "How would you feel about that?" Emma considered this. "Would Justice come too?" Diana laughed. "Yes, Justice would definitely come too." "Cool." Emma nodded decisively. "I think that would be good. Diana makes really good pancakes, and she helps me with my homework when you're tired." Sarah exchanged an amused glance with Diana. "Those are excellent points. And you smile more when Diana's here," Emma added, with the piercing insight of children. "You both do." Later that night, as they lay in bed together, Diana traced patterns on Sarah's arm. "Out of the mouths of babes," she murmured. "You do smile more these days." "So do you," Sarah replied, kissing her softly. Emma noticed. "Smart kid." "She gets that from me," Sarah joked, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The feeling of finding balance after years of teetering on the edge. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't always be easy, but it was theirs. And for now, that was enough. Moving day arrived on a sweltering July morning. Sarah stood in the empty apartment where she and Emma had started their new life a year ago, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and excitement. The walls that had once seemed so foreign now held memories. Emma losing her first tooth at the kitchen table, their first Christmas tree in the corner by the window, late-night conversations with Diana on the couch. "Mom, are you coming?" Emma called from the doorway, impatient to get to their new home. "Just taking one last look," Sarah replied, running her hand along the counter. Outside, Diana was supervising the last of the boxes being loaded into the moving truck. She smiled when she spotted Sarah and Emma. "All set?" she asked, tucking a strand of hair behind Sarah's ear. Sarah nodded. "Ready when you are." Their new place was a 3-bedroom house with a small backyard, nothing extravagant, but a significant upgrade from both Sarah's apartment and Diana's downtown condo. They'd found it together, both immediately drawn to the big windows and the maple tree in the yard. Emma had already claimed the bedroom with the built-in bookshelf, leaving the master bedroom for Sarah and Diana and the third bedroom as a shared office space. Justice the cat had spent the morning cautiously exploring each room, eventually settling on a sunny spot in the living room. By evening, they were surrounded by boxes, exhausted but happy. They'd managed to set up the beds and unpack the kitchen essentials, enough to order pizza and collapse on the couch together. "Here's to new beginnings," Diana said, raising her beer bottle in a toast. "To our home," Sarah added, clinking her bottle against Diana's. Emma, half asleep against Sarah's side, mumbled, "To justice not peeing on my stuff." Diana burst out laughing. "I've had many toasts in my life, but that's definitely a first." The first week in the new house established their rhythms. Diana, always an early riser, would make coffee and take her first cup to the backyard to watch the sunrise. Sarah would join her an hour later, usually after making sure Emma was up and getting ready for her summer day camp. Evenings were for joint cooking projects, board games, or walks around their new neighborhood. It wasn't perfect. There were disagreements about household chores, adjustments to each other's habits, and the occasional clash over parenting decisions. But there was also a fundamental respect that underpinned every interaction, a willingness to listen and compromise that Sarah had never experienced in her marriage to Mark. One Saturday morning, as Sarah and Diana sat in the backyard with their coffee, Diana broached a subject they'd been dancing around. "I was thinking about Emma's last name," she said carefully. Sarah looked up, surprised. "What about it?" "She has Mark's last name, Wilson. You kept your maiden name, Morgan, after the divorce. I was wondering if that ever bothers you." Sarah considered this. "Sometimes," she admitted, "especially when people assume we have different last names because I'm not her real mother." Diana nodded. "Would you ever consider changing it? Or adding Morgan to Wilson?" "I've thought about it," Sarah said. "But it seemed like one more battle with Mark that I didn't have the energy for. And now," Sarah studied Diana's face, "now I think I'd be more open to discussing it." "Why do you ask?" Diana set down her coffee cup. "Because I've been thinking about names too. Specifically mine." "Diana Reed is a pretty great name," Sarah teased gently. "It is," Diana agreed with a smile. "But I've been wondering if someday it might be Diana Morgan." The implication hung in the air between them. Sarah's heart raced. "Are you proposing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not exactly," Diana replied. "Not yet. But I'm saying I see that as our future, if you do too. I want us to be a family in every sense of the word." Sarah reached for Diana's hand. "I see that too," she said softly. "I just didn't know if you were ready to think about marriage, given everything you've said about prioritizing your career." "Meeting you and Emma changed my perspective," Diana said simply. "I still care about my work, but I've realized there's room for both. You've shown me that." The conversation was interrupted by Emma bursting through the back door, Justice trailing behind her. "Can we plant a garden?" she asked, pointing to the empty flower beds along the fence. "Ms. Patrice at day camp says we can grow our own vegetables, and it's not even that hard." Diana laughed. "Good morning to you too, sunshine." "Morning," Emma said impatiently. "So can we?" "Diana already got me that plant, and it's still alive." Sarah and Diana exchanged amused glances. "I think a garden sounds wonderful," Sarah said. "We could start small and see how it goes." "Yes." Emma pumped her fist. "I want to grow carrots and tomatoes and those purple eggplants." "Ambitious," Diana commented. "Maybe we should do some research first." The gardening project became their weekend focus for the rest of the summer. They cleared the beds, bought soil and seeds, and planted according to the meticulous plan Emma had drawn up with Diana's help. Sarah, who had never grown so much as a houseplant successfully, found herself enjoying the rhythmic work of digging and watering. "There's something satisfying about building something from the ground up," she commented one evening as they admired their work. "Isn't that what we've been doing all year?" Diana replied, slipping an arm around her waist. In August, Mark came to visit Emma for a long weekend. Sarah had offered their guest room, but he'd opted for a hotel nearby, which came as a relief to everyone. Despite the civility of their recent interactions, having her ex-husband sleep under the same roof as her new partner seemed unnecessarily complicated. The first meeting between Mark and Diana was brief but cordial, occurring when he came to pick up Emma for their day together. "It's good to finally meet you," Diana said, extending her hand. "Emma talks about you all the time." Mark seemed taken aback by her friendliness, but shook her hand. "You too. Thanks for, being good to my kid." After they left, Diana found Sarah stress cleaning the kitchen. "That wasn't so bad," she offered. Sarah scrubbed at an already clean counter. "It's just weird. All of it." "Of course it is," Diana agreed. "But we're doing okay." The weekend passed more smoothly than Sarah had anticipated. Emma came home each evening bubbling with stories about her adventures with her dad, and Mark returned her on time and in good spirits. On the final day, he even complimented their garden as he was leaving. "Emma says you're growing eggplants," he said to Diana. "That was always her favorite when she was little." "I didn't know that," Diana replied, genuinely interested. "Yeah, weird kid," Mark said with affection. Most kids hate eggplant, but she couldn't get enough of it. It was a small moment, but it represented something significant. Mark acknowledging Diana's place in Emma's life, sharing a piece of history that connected them all. Sarah, watching from the porch, felt a knot of tension she hadn't even realized she was carrying begin to loosen. Later, after Mark had gone and Emma was in bed, Sarah found Diana in their office, reviewing case notes. "Thank you," Sarah said, perching on the edge of the desk. Diana looked up. "For what?" "For making this weekend easier than it could have been. For being kind to Mark even though you know how much he hurt me. For loving Emma enough to care about her relationship with her dad." Diana set down her papers. "That's what family does," she said simply. "And we're a family now, complicated history and all." The word family settled around Sarah like a warm blanket. She thought about their conversation from weeks earlier, about names and futures and commitments. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began. "About names. About being a family in every sense." Diana waited, her expression open. "I don't need a proposal right now," Sarah continued. "But I want you to know that when you're ready, my answer will be yes." Diana stood and pulled Sarah into her arms. "Good to know," she murmured against her hair. The following week brought the arrival of photographs from their lawyer, evidence for their upcoming trial. Sarah spread them across the kitchen table after Emma was in bed, images of polluted streams and sick children from the community they were representing. "It's heartbreaking," she said, studying a picture of a young boy with a breathing tube. "These families trusted that the water was safe." Diana nodded grimly. "That's why this case matters so much. It's not just about financial compensation, it's about accountability." They worked late into the night, organizing the evidence and refining their arguments. It was demanding work, but Sarah found a deep satisfaction in it. She was using her skills to make a difference, fighting for families who reminded her of her own childhood community. "You've come a long way from filing paperwork for Harrington," Diana observed as they finally packed up for the night. Sarah smiled. "I've come a long way in every part of my life." The next morning, Sarah woke early, slipping out of bed without disturbing Diana. She made coffee and took it to the backyard, settling into what had become Diana's usual spot to watch the sunrise. As the sky lightened from deep blue to pink and gold, Sarah reflected on the past year. She thought about the frightened, broken woman who had moved into that small apartment with Emma, the woman who could barely promise her daughter pancakes. That version of herself had been so lost, so convinced that her life was over after her marriage ended. She couldn't have imagined then where she would be now, in a home she loved, with work that fulfilled her, building a life with someone who saw her strengths and supported her through her weaknesses. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been setbacks and difficult conversations, moments of doubt and fear. But with each small step, taking the research position, allowing herself to trust Diana, setting boundaries with Mark, advocating for herself and Emma, she had built a new foundation. Not perfect, not unshakable, but strong enough to support the life she wanted. The back door opened, and Diana emerged with her own coffee cup, hair tousled from sleep. "You stole my spot," she said with a sleepy smile. Just borrowing it, Sarah replied, making room on the step beside her. It has the best view. Diana sat down, their shoulders touching. What are you thinking about so early? Life. How much can change in a year? Sarah leaned into Diana's warmth. How sometimes the hardest things lead to the best places. That's pretty profound for 6 in the morning, Diana teased gently. I have my moments. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights spread across their small backyard. Over the garden Emma had insisted on planting, the maple tree that had sold them on the house, the bird feeder Diana had hung last weekend. Small things, ordinary things, that together created something precious. From inside came the sound of Emma's bedroom door opening, followed by the patter of feet and Justice's distinctive meow. Here comes the morning committee, Diana murmured. Sarah smiled, ready to start another day in this life they were building together. Not the life she'd once planned, but something deeper and truer than she'd ever imagined possible.